Welcome to the Actionable ESG Talk series brought to you by AKFI, the Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first non-profit industry consortium committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. Actionable ESG Talk series bring together great minds to discuss the current and future state of ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. I'm delighted to be here with Nikos and Michael today, our special guests. I'll take a few seconds to go through their extended biography. You can find more on YouTube. I'll start with Nikos Avlonas, sorry, CSE
Right.
president, recognized leader who has received multiple awards in corporate sustainability and social entrepreneurship with over 15 years of global experience. He is the founder and president of CSE, a global sustainability strategic advisory and training organization which operates in North America, Europe, and MENA. And in the last 4 years, Nikos has served as adjunct sustainability professor at UIC and DePaul universities. Welcome, Nikos. And I'll
Thank
go
you.
to thank you for joining us today. And
Thanks, Manuel.
we have also Michael Sheridan. He is a PhD and a business professor and sustainability consultant focused on helping organizations make meaningful progress toward the environment and social goals. Um, Michael also serves as a senior associate of consulting and training at CSE, and we'll talk more about it toward the end of this talk about CSE. At Sunny New Paltz, Michael teaches strategy and sustainability and mentors student teams on real-world consulting projects with local nonprofit and businesses. Welcome both.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Again, thanks for joining us. We'll kick off with a broad question about circular economy. And we know that circular economy is needed even more than before today. Could you please tell us a little bit more? What do you see in terms of trends in circular economy? And we'll take it from there.
First, thanks, Manuel. Thanks for having me on board together with Michael. First of all, let me say that circular economy is mostly an unknown term for most of the public, but even for students, for professionals, it's still not a very straightforward term like waste management or other terms or sustainability. So it's a more tricky term. Let me clarify that before we get started. So, circular economy is the concept where everything can be reused and everything should, at the end of the story, when we're creating products and everything, we should have zero waste to the environment. So, it's about reusing again and again every material we extract from the environment, do not dispose anything, and have a zero waste footprint. It's exactly against the linear economy model we have right now. So what we do every day is we take, make, and dispose to the landfills, air, and water. And then we're very proud, of course, about that when we are more productive on all these issues. Today, the circular economy, due to the scarcity of materials, due to the geopolitical disruptions in the supply chain, has a huge impact to the economy because, as we know, most of the cost of materials, raw materials, are increasing. And this is a painful issue for all companies, including consumers, which are the buyers of products.
Thank you, Nikos. And actually, it's not only increasing, but some materials are simply hard to get or unavailable. We talk a lot about rare earth
Exactly.
and so on.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and maybe continuing the question, many times we think of circular economy or sustainability in general as being a cost, an economic cost, which reduces growth, profits, and so on. I see it with our students. They say sustainability costs money. How circular economy plays in this picture of helping companies actually to be profitable and more profitable?
Yes, of course. Michael?
Why don't you take that, Nikos, and I'll fill in the blanks.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, that's happy to say more about that. The sustainability and circular economy are concepts that are where you can invest into your company in order to become more financially sustainable. So we do not consider as an expense, we consider as an investment. For example, you invest in cybersecurity in order to keep your organization safe from hackers, right? It's exactly the same for sustainability and circular economy. You invest in your company to make it more resilient and more sustainable. So it should not be considered as a cost, but only as an opportunity to financially be sustainable in the short term and in the long term. Now, circular economy, if I go more in depth into this topic,
Please.
it's about also reducing the cost of the raw materials you use or packaging that you're using, because as we know, the cost of raw materials is booming right now, and some of them have been disappeared from the market. So identifying ways that you can reuse materials, and it's going to be very cost effective for a long-term strategy of your organization. We have seen so many examples of organizations that they start doing that, and this is very promising.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that, when we take a circular perspective, as Nico said, there's no such thing as waste. So what we had previously considered waste, these undervalued assets or resources are now being recognized for their value. So just an example I use with my students all the time is like breweries and hog farms, right? So at the end of the day, a brewer has a large bill of grains that the sugar has been extracted for the brewing process. But otherwise, it's delicious and nutritious. So, you know, for a while that was being treated as waste. But then you bring in the hog farmer, and they can feed the spent bill, grain bill to the hogs. So on the brewery side, you're avoiding disposal costs, and then on the farmer side, you have decreased input costs. Pigs are fed whole grain; they're even tastier. So on both sides, you're creating value. So circularity. All the things that Nikos was saying, avoiding that take waste linear mindset, but now we're creating value on both sides. So that is also driving down costs for all parties.
Well, that's an excellent example, actually. And, we forget one thing. Companies pay for disposal of waste. And if we, as you said, if you reallocate this cost to the front end of the company to become more efficient
Yeah.
in terms of circular economy, I won't go that far. I'll let the finance guy to tell us.
Manuel, can
But
I say something? But
sure, please.
waste management and treatment of waste material is going to be considered like treatment of gold in the next couple of years.
That's an excellent point. It will be as expensive as extracting gold, I think you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not exactly saying that.
No,
What I'm saying is
He's
that
on the record. Yes.
what I'm
it's
trying
on
to
the
say
order.
is that the value of the disposed material is going to be increased and increased and increased again and again and again the next couple of years. So we're going to have the waste management exchange, perhaps like we had with the carbon market a couple of years ago with carbon emissions. So it's going to be a topic with high value and it's going to attract a lot of investors and companies under this perspective. I'm not going to say that they're going to have the same value like gold, but it's going to be very valuable to treat to waste.
Some of the minerals you use, let's say in a smartphone today or in an iPhone, are probably more expensive already than gold per ounce.
Oh,
Exactly.
So recovering them, reusing them even partially
Mhm.
will definitely justify the business case. And this is very important. The waste disposal globally, it's not only an has environmental challenges, but I think it's the third or fourth largest economic cycle in the world.
Yes.
We forget that we spend a lot of money to throw away things.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And so, no, thank you both. And I think from today's discussion, actually, it didn't occur to me that we can reallocate the cost of waste disposal, and the business case looks much brighter because you don't have to have major or significant investments at the front end. You can support it from reducing waste, and you can do it on a schedule in a number of years.
Yeah, and we'll probably get into this later on, but and that's the reason why it's so important at the design stage to be able to separate what is valuable from, the waste stream from what is toxic or whatever the case may be. So, I'm sure we'll get to that later, but design is
Sure.
crucial in this process.
So front end
Yeah,
versus
absolutely. So, yeah,
afterthought.
yeah, exactly.
And we were talking before this show about the role of AKFI in supply chain and how we also looking at the supply chain. And if you look at the circular economy, it seems to be built specifically to work with the supply chain.
Right. Yes.
Absolutely.
And Manuel, I mean, there is an high pressure the last 2, 3 years from larger companies to their supply chains to do more sustainability or to provide more sustainable products to them. And also, that's one factor, which is a very big booster of more sustainability in the supply chain and more circular economy, of course, at the same time. Also, don't forget that we have state level regulations like the about packaging and extended producer responsibility, EPR, as we call it, which are accelerating circular practices, to be honest. And it will accelerate more and more circular practices in the near future. So circular economy, it's not only a great concept for the future, it's a great concept for today as we speak. And one of the biggest problems of the supply chains and for products manufacturers is they cannot calculate or specify the circularity rate of every product. And I'm going to come back to that later on, probably with more details. But circularity rate of a product means how circular, right, can a product is, how much of the product materials has been reused, has been replaced, right, and again and again and again.
I,
So they have reduced significant waste.
I, I foresee a case where there will be a big green label on the products with a number, and you will see how many times it can be recycled, right? Of course, and we have to be realistic. There is no perfect process. There will be losses in recycle, so you'll have
Right.
indices like 80%, 90%, and not everything is totally recyclable physically or cost-wise, right? So
Yeah. Yeah,
I
but
think
oh, I'm sorry, man.
no, please go ahead.
We're starting to see this actually. There's the upcoming EU regulation with the battery digital passport. So, they're using blockchain and a QR code to create a digital twin for each battery. And that contains information on the raw materials, its chemical composition, its carbon footprint, and as well as instructions for repair and reuse and recycling rates. So what
Disposal.
that yeah, it's pretty cool. It allows that traceability from the mine to the manufacturing to use all the way to the end of the life. And there's various levels depending on your role in the supply chain. So customers might not see some proprietary information, but you know, um, we're very close. I think Nikos can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that rolls out in 2027, the regulations. So we'll start to see that disseminated throughout. So we're almost there. The
Yep.
future is close.
Well, 27 is not far away already. And going back a little bit to Nikos, because you mentioned packaging and the packaging regulation, I have not met many people in the business of sustainability that recognize the fact that this is in effect. And as far as my understanding, and please help me here, it's global. It goes across the supply chain, and it goes back to original packaging of the goods.
Exactly. Only in EU there is the we in August is going to be the starting of the EU packaging and waste regulation, which is mandatory for all manufacturers and retailers, by the way, and they have to reduce the carbon footprint of their packaging materials. They need to have a particular percent of reused content into the packaging material, and they need to create a plan by 2030 to have full reused packaging material. This is a big change into the market because, as you know, global supply chains are interrelated together. So this is going to have also an influence in US, Canada, and other countries that they have relationships with Europe, trade relationships with Europe in terms of products. And this is already happening as we speak. It's not in 2027, it's in August 2026. So
And
that's why,
this is a
yeah,
circular economy example through standards and through regulations, right?
Mhm.
exactly, exactly. So circular economy is becoming in the spectrum of regulation, and we're going to see more and more regulation towards circular economy in the next coming years. Not because necessarily they all believe in the good for the environment, but because it's necessary for reducing costs and also saving material which you cannot find anymore. So it's a necessity that it has to be done right now. There's no other way. Just to let
Absolutely.
you know, Manuel, and to our audience, that already using resources like having 1.7 Earths already as we speak.
Well, we have only zero point 0.9 Earth.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
doubling
And
the
if we continue doing and consuming like we do right now, we by 2035 we're gonna need, I'm sorry, 2040, we're gonna need 3 Earths to be able to use the materials from them in order to sustain the life, the lifestyle we have with product consumption and all these things. Obviously, this is scientific research. Obviously, this is not sustainable at all. There are limitations. We know the limitations, and there are not many things happening at the same time. So we need to act right away on this issue.
absolutely. Michael, would you like to add something?
I mean, not too much. Nico's covered it. I mean, but the consumption rate is increasing. The supply chains are disrupted. We are moving into a less globalized economy. So the impetus to have a secure source of materials is becoming more and more important. So, this is where there's no other, as Nico said, there's no other opportunity or no other option besides circularity to recapture those valuable resources and bring them back into the supply chain.
Absolutely. And if we talk about the supply chain and regulations, I wanted to point something we are doing at AKFI. I think, Michael, you are aware about that plan or that program, is to bring together a framework and a standard that looks horizontally at the supply chain. We found that in sustainability, we go vertically, company by company, CSRD and so on. But reporting on a single company misses the supply chain, misses the carbon footprint scope 3, misses the packaging, misses the labor factors, right? And the labor conditions. So eventually this has to become also horizontal. We think that the reporting is already horizontal, but it's sort of implicit. It's not explicit, like we talked about the packaging, right? You have to disclose where is the packaging or the battery original from.
Mhm.
These are horizontal, if you want, information flows, which have to go toward the final manufacturer and the end user. So
Right.
we notice information flows have to change, not only material flows, which we talk so much about it in circular economy.
Absolutely. And, I think the design needs to be able to, sorry, excuse me. Design stage is really important as well. So the coordination across supply chain, to work with, at the design stage, to have in mind that coordination. So, Herman Miller calls it design for disassembly. What it
Mhm.
means is, how do you break down the finished product into those modular pieces? And by redesigning the Aeron chair, they had some knock-on effects.
Sure.
They increased circularity, but it also decreased production costs by 20% because just more simple design. They were able to bring those materials back into the supply chain. But without that, horizontal coordination across the supply chain, that doesn't happen.
We actually worked on a white paper. We have a white paper in AKFI, which is looking at the front end process.
Hmm.
In high tech, at least, you have two key documents: market requirement documents (MRD) and product requirement documents. So we work on how these documents have to be changed. We call it sustainable MRD and sustainable PRD, in
Hmm.
order to tell designers and the business community how the sustainability has to come at the front end. And this is, frankly, before we even learn about circular economy.
Hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
So, and I think they are generally applicable, usually, at least in in public companies, rather, it starts with a business case, with an evaluation of the business, the market, and that's where I have to start to think about sustainability business, circularity, packaging, labeling, and all this. If you put it at the end, it's added cost,
Right. Yeah.
complexity, and sometimes it's not possible. You cannot disassembly today a phone and recover the materials.
Yeah, it's almost like the quality is free, right? Concept from the 80s, right? And we recognize those costs.
Right, exactly. And this is another aspect which we'll probably not have time to cover it today, but the financial industry has to also adjust, financial and insurance industry. I see more and more, especially the insurance industry, more and more sensitive to risks from environmental and
Yeah.
social. And that's reflected in increasing the rates. So some companies cannot afford insurance, for instance.
Hmm.
So education will be very important. We'll leave it to Nikos and you, Michael.
I'm working on it. Yeah, thanks.
And uh, we say that without clear measurements, it's very difficult to put these factors in finance, in design, and so on. Um, do you have some KPIs currently or in the future for circular economy that you
Yes,
may
of
consider?
course. Of course. So first of all, Manuel, thanks for your great question. We're going to share with you for the first time in the public that in CSE we are working for the last 1 year to launch a global initiative on product circularity rating and assurance. What we want to do is to create a framework that is going to calculate the circularity of every product and then create a label that it can be used and be communicated in a transparent way to the public. So it's going to be verified, of course, data that the company should uh, send to the tool, and then we're going to verify that and create a rating. Through that, our objective is to create a self-assessment tool and then a tool that is going to enable companies to become more circular, create more circular products, and also allow to the consumers to compare the circularity of every product and make the right choice, especially the Generation Z, which is very, very fan of circularity, as we know from our students the last couple of years.
And it's very interesting you saying that, by the way, and thank you for choosing us to be the first to announce it. I'll have a couple of quick questions about it, but focusing on Gen Zers, and as a former chief marketing officer, I can tell you that the marketing is good and wrong. Is it good? Yes, people are very sensitive to sustainability, circular economy, but they are wrong when companies think they will pay more because they have less money.
Mm.
So Gen Z is not the richest generation right now. So we need to adjust a little bit the model to permit that. Going back to what you said, the labeling process and so on, that's very much in line with supply chain information flow. And what we see, it's actually when you look at the supply chain and we look at the information required, both, I'll go into that in a second, both by the financial industry and the regulations, the regulatory bodies. It's they are looking at the finance. They're looking at double materiality. Now, if you talk to the finance industry, you find out something very interesting. They are also looking for, let's not call it real time, but really near real time information. They don't want to read a 1 year report, which was, started 2 years ago and published last year, and assess risk, because finance, it's about risk, right? Risk and investment. So how do you consider this from the perspective of the announcement of creating a framework for
Yes.
circular economy?